Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the October Ordinary Council meeting. We're starting a few minutes late at 6:05. I'll declare this council meeting open. Welcome all to this chamber. The town of Bassendean acknowledges the Whadjuk Noongar people as the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the region. I have no announcements as the presiding person tonight. Attendances, apologies and applications for leave of absence. We have an apology from Councillor Burke. Councillor Carter is on leave at the moment. Councillors, do we have any other apologies? No? Okay. So councillors, do I have any applications for leave of absence? Councillor Ames? No? Okay.
No, Madam Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, declarations of interest. Now I believe that Councillor Ames, you have 2 declarations of interest.
Yes, that is correct, Madam Mayor, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to declare them. Paperwork has been submitted and should be with the CEO as we speak for items 12.5 and 12.8, which are in relation to the Bassendean Oval redevelopment and also the Swan District lighting RFQ, just for the reason that I've been a long-term associate with the football club and the Bassendean Oval precinct. And currently an honorary, not a financial member of the Swan District Football Club. Thank you.
Okay, so to be clear for the community, that's an impartiality interest, which under the Act allows the councillor to continue to participate and vote in these items. Thank you, Councillor Ames. Presentations or deputations. There are no deputations as far as I know tonight. Presentations. We have no presentations. The next item, item 6, is statements by members of the public. I note that 12.5, there is a statement here from Anne Macbeth. Would you like to come to the microphone and the chair just at the end of the table there and provide your statement? Now, just to be aware, statements are 2 minutes long. We have a clock up on the wall which will allow you to know when you're coming to the end of your 2 minutes. And thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Has everyone received a copy of my request?
Yes, I believe it.
So I don't need to read it out. So I will just, is that correct? I don't need to read it out.
There was an email that came through.
Yes.
And I do have a copy in front of me as well.
And all the councillors present have a copy of that. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so I will, to keep it within the time limit, I've written down very simple but important request to defer this item for at least 7 days to allow further dissemination to councillors of pertinent information regarding this item, so they, the councillors, can have a more informed debate and make a more considered decision. While I appreciate all development projects have a built-in time pressure to proceed, I believe that the CEO, Cameron Woods, in making this recommendation to proceed, should have sufficient confidence in the councillors accepting his recommendation that he should have no qualms in now allowing another minimum of 7 days before councillors need to make their decision. Cameron Woods will be demonstrating good faith and respect for the concerns of the ratepayers, that their council be fully aware of the significance of their decision on this item. Thank you.
Okay. Councillors, questions? No? Okay, it's statement time, isn't it? Yes. Sorry, it's not deputation. Thank you for that, Miss Macbeth. If you'd like to...
Thank you.
See. Okay. Okay, we now move to item 7, which is questions from members. Yes, are there any others who'd like to make statements before we move on to question time? Yes, sir, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Well, this is statement time, then we move on to question time.
Decipher it.
Okay.
Michael Grogan, 5 Land Street. Look, my question to the council is, where do we sit as far as the redevelopment of the Point Reserve? The reason why I say that, the previous CEO, in her statement when it was first the jetties were pulled down, said that the councils were going to take a holistic view of the whole setup. There was a survey done, probably at great expense, on what we could do, and I put a submission in, and a lot of people did, but it seems to have been forgotten. But, you know, as a rider to that, this is one of our sacred sites in Bassendean. It seems to be pushed to the side. It's one of the reasons we have the Home by the Swan and Bassendean it is. So I just wait to see, in due course, where the council sits and how they're proceeding with reconstituting even one jetty there.
Okay, so with the indulgence of staff and councillors, I will assure you that it has not been forgotten and that it has been a topic of discussion during the budget process. So we have ongoing discussions about this, and I do understand, and we don't have Miss Davies here tonight, but there are stages, and I think the foreshore restoration may well be included in this year's budget. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Mayor, it's for design and documentation this financial year.
Okay, so because we're a small council without a significant amount of money, I think what you'll see is that there will be a staged process happening. But you're correct, you know, it has been a bit quiet, but it has not been forgotten.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, if we don't have any statements, that was a question. I think we've moved on to question time now. So I'll just ask the audience if there's any more questions before I read out the questions that are sent in by email. Okay, so we have a question here from Fadi Salam in Eden Hill. Will there be any plans for a second public library, preferably in the Eden Hill area? The provision of public library services is guided by the Australian Library and Information Association standards and guidelines for public libraries. These standards are driven by the population size of a local government area. As the town of Bassendean has a population of 16,631, only one public library is required to provide a quality service to the community. It would therefore be unlikely that a local government of this size would provide an additional library without a population above 50,000 residents. The second question from the same gentleman: will there be any plan to include more sporting facilities at Jubilee Park, for example, a basketball court, tennis courts and others? That's an interesting question, given that we have a Jubilee Reserve Master Plan where Council has been advocating for additional funding from state and federal at the last elections, and also coming up to the new elections next year. Jubilee Reserve Master Plan is part of our advocacy priority projects. Given the amount of money that would be required, I think initially, and I'll defer to the CEO if this is correct, I think initially we would have to look at a scaled down version of redevelopment in that area, simply because of financial reasons. Would you concur with that opinion?
Yes, Madam Mayor. The current state of play, which I think we've addressed to the question to the resident, is we've stripped it down to make sure that we can optimise its current sport. So we're dedicating upgrades to Caledonian Soccer Club, particularly with 2 more sets of change rooms to cater for the female participation rates. And also with Stan Moses, it's a refurbishment and an upgrade to add 2 more change rooms and make some accessibility issues rectified, because at the moment there is no way for somebody with access issues to get upstairs. So we're concentrating on making those venues cater for more participants by increasing the change rooms and making them more functional, as well as council's committed 600,000 to irrigating the reserve and increasing the turf that is available to use by the irrigation, as well as about 1.6 million in lighting. So rather than the lighting at the moment is very restrictive, so we're getting a lot of overuse of particular patches. So the new irrigation and new lights will allow us to spread out. The investigations we've had around basketball is that unless you can have 6 or 8 courts in the one indoor venue, they're not viable. So there is no space at Jubilee Reserve to add 6 or 8 indoor courts, as well as hard court tennis courts without eating into the grass playing surface. And the growth of the grass sports such as soccer, football, cricket and even rugby and those types of sports is growing such that we need to retain the reserve for those sports.
Thank you. It is good to see that the lighting, particularly at Jubilee, is in this year's budget, and also the turf management. The other aspect of this as well is that the clubs themselves, under the normal grant program, council would provide 1/3, state government 1/3 and the clubs 1/3. However, that is not possible, so the council are actually funding 2/3 of the lighting and the turf replacement and management and irrigation. So it is a significant project thus far. However, we require funding from state and federal to progress the built form restoration and redevelopment as well in the next upcoming election. You might consider that when talking to politicians in coming months. Okay. Okay. Okay, item 8 is petitions. I do not believe there are any petitions. This will now move us on to item 9.1, which is the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on Tuesday, the 24th of September, to be received as a true and correct record. Do I have a mover for that item? Councillor Wilding. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Polifka. Do I have anyone against? I'll declare that carried. I'm assuming, Councillor Ames, you're in support of that? Yes?
Yes, if you don't hear from me, I'm in full support. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Business deferred from a previous meeting, there is nil. External committee reports and updates, there are nil. This moves us on to officer reports. So in en bloc, I intend to remove 12.5, which is the concept plan, Bassendean Oval Precinct Redevelopment Feasibility Study. Councillors, do I have any other items to come out of en bloc? No? Okay, so, sorry?
Madam Mayor, it's remiss of us, 12.3, the piece on...
Oh, yeah.
Yes?
Yes, the piece on the Welga elections advocacy positions. There was several pieces to that, and there was one regarding the election of mayor that we didn't have a recommendation on, given that there'd been much debate over time. So some direction on that would be very useful if that's possible,
So
please.
coming out of en bloc, obviously.
Thank you.
Right, okay. And then we can have the staff talk to it when we come to that item. Okay, so we have 12.3, which is the Welga election advocacy positions, and 12.5, which is the concept plan, Bassendean Oval Precinct Redevelopment Feasibility Study. Both of those are coming out of en bloc. This leaves us with 12.2, 12.4 and 12.6 remaining en bloc. So, councillors, can I have a mover for those 3 items to be en bloc? Councillor Wilding, seconded. Councillor John. Do I have anyone against? I'll declare those carried. So this brings us to the first item to be considered today is 12.3, which is the Walga election advocacy positions. And I believe, Mr. CEO, you will discuss this?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor, and if I need support, I will ask our governance manager to jump in. She's prepared the report. So quite simply, this report is an advocacy report, and it's the town of Bassendean's opportunity to put their position forward in relation to this item. So the purpose of the report is for Councillor to, sorry, wrong one. Purpose of the report is to consider Walga's review of its current and alternative elections advocacy positions and provide a response representing the town of Bassendean and its residents. We've identified, when we've written the report, we've identified the sections in 6 parts, the recommendations in 6 parts. The staff have made a recommendation in relation to 5 of the parts, and I'll go through those quickly. And we've left part 6 open for council to discuss and determine the best way forward tonight, and that will be around the method of election of the mayor at future local government elections. Part 1 is around participation, and the staff are suggesting and recommending that the sector continues to support that the elections are voluntary, so it's not a mandatory or compulsion to turn up and vote at annual elections. And the main reason we think that is it adds significant costs to running an election if 16,000 people were to turn up for that event. The terms of office, we're suggesting the status quo continues, because we've set up with a 2-year review period of our council plan and a 4-year complete review of our council plan, and it seems to work quite well, bringing in generational change. So we're considering that the terms of office will be no change, which is a 4-year term with 2-year spills. In relation to voting methods, last year's, I don't know if you remember the last election, and they moved away from first past the post to preferential voting, and we think that was a retrograde step. We're suggesting we go back to first past the post. It's much simpler, it's easier to understand for the residents, and particularly for the candidates on voting night. So we're selecting going back to first past the post, which is option A. Internal elections, again, I think you remember last year we had the last election we were doing our own committees, and it got quite involved just selecting committee. We've only got 7 councils because of the new regulation, so we're just considering let's get rid of optional preferential voting and stay with first past the post. Voting accessibility, we're suggesting that the town of Bassendean supports all forms of people being able to vote, including electronic voting, postal voting and in-person voting. We think that works really well for everybody in the community, so we're suggesting that all 3 should remain. And the last one, as I said earlier, is around methods of election of the mayor. And since my time here, we've had at the meetings in March, we have with our ratepayers meeting, annual electors meeting, we've had people suggest that it should be a popularly elected mayor. At the moment, it's working well the way it is, so the staff consider it not their domain to be making a recommendation. We think this should be made by the council here tonight, so we haven't selected a particular viewpoint on that. But there are 3 options which are outlined in the report, and we're suggesting council tonight determine that.
Okay. So just to confirm, the status of the election of the mayor at the moment is bands 1 and 2. Their mayors, under the recent changes in the Local Government Act, are popularly elected by the voters. And bands 3 and 4, because they're smaller councils, their mayors are elected by their councillors.
By their peers, yep.
Yeah, by their peers. So that is the current status. Councillors, do you have any questions from the CEO? Okay, so the three options.
Councillor Ames might have a question. Madam
Sorry,
Mayor.
Councillor Ames, yes?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to the CEO. Just in regards to what would be the ultimate ongoing expense for a popularly elected mayor? So if we were to factor that in, to our next elections next year, what would be, I suppose, the financial and other risk associated with going to a popularly elected mayor like our larger, I suppose, brethren, Band 1 and 2 local government authorities? Would there be any significant differences other than obviously that vote happening? What implications will that have on the town?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Ames. I might just ask Jo to answer that based on her understanding of the legislation.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Ames. Certainly, the process of an election is a costly process no matter what, but I would consider that it would just form just another part of the process. As a person would elect their nominated councillor, depending on how many were coming up for election, they would do the same with the mayoral position, because it would be, you'd be electing 6 councillors, 6 council members and a mayor. Sorry.
May I ask an additional question? This is probably speculation, but in the past, there have been instances, and correct me if I'm wrong, there have been instances where some candidates vying for the role of mayor through community and voters, there's been an extensive amount of money spent by those candidates. So my question is, does the cost of running a mayoral campaign with the public perhaps throw some people out of the race who may not have those funds to spend?
Through you, Mayor, I think, in answering your question, I think that it would be remiss of me to, comment on,
Okay.
what would be, speculation about how much someone would put into that campaign. I would suggest I would respectfully not answer that question if I can.
Okay, so the City of Swan had how many candidates running for mayor last time? Was it 11? I think there was only one councillor who didn't run for mayor, from memory. I would imagine that wasn't a very expensive process. Anyway, councillors, from what I can see here, we have 3 different...
I had a question.
Sorry, yes, sorry.
Yeah, just so this is a Walga advocacy position. So if we as a local government wanted to retain the choice as to how our mayor was elected, would that be supporting no current change? Because as I understand it, and I seek clarification on that, as things currently stands, classes 1 and 2 are required to directly elect the mayor or the president, whereas the other bands have the choice of opting into that regime. Is that the case?
In answer to your question, that is the current state government. That's the legislative requirements at the moment, which is, as you say, class 1 and 2s have to go to the popularly elected mayor, and 3 and 4s can. Previously, they could choose which direction they went, and in this one, it is to be elected by the peers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So currently, the advocacy position is prior to the change. So if you return to the previous legislative provision, which is all classes of local governments can decide by absolute majority the method of electing their mayor. So that's the previous.
So to keep things as they are, that would be 6A, which is where it's mandatory for bands 1 and 2, but is an election for bands 3 and 4. And if we supported that advocacy position, that would still allow the town the ability, should it so choose, to move to the method which is prescribed for bands 1 and 2.
So if you chose
6A,
that is the current legislation, correct, as we have just discussed. If you chose B, it would be to return to the previous legislation where you decided by absolute majority what your choice would be. And then C would be the one where it would be directly electing your mayor. So it's applying the current provisions which is to the larger ones and twos, to all bands of local government.
So 6A would maintain the status quo, and
Yes.
if that was to remain
That's what you
the
did in
case,
23. Yes.
then we as a council, if we thought it was sufficiently important, could at a later stage elect to have our mayor appointed in that way. So we're not prohibited from doing that. It's just saying that the other bands 1 and 2, it's mandatory for them. So we can still choose whether we do that, but it's just not mandatory for us.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question? And correct me if I'm wrong, but 6B is the Walga position, is it not? Sorry. I should have gone back and had a look. Yeah, they've got here 6B, their position statement, local governments should determine whether their mayor or president will be elected by the council or elected by the community. That's how I read it. That's the Walga position.
So that's A, it must be A,
Okay.
because you get an option.
I thought that was the Walga position statement. I thought that's...
Local government should determine whether the mayor or president will be elected by council, like PD says.
Okay.
It's A.
Okay. So that's what Walga are supporting. Okay. But what they've done is put this out to local governments for lack of a better word, a survey. So councillors...
Just one final question on that. So for us,
Sorry. Yep, so 6B is what Walga themselves are supporting, but they're asking councils across the state to provide their feedback on what they would support before they settle on that position definitively. Right, so Councillor Plifka.
my question is that for a council that isn't a band 1 or band 2, such as the town of Bassendean, don't A and B both lead to the same place? No? Well, one of them says that we could, so if A, currently we can choose our method, and B is then saying everybody can choose their method, the difference is only appreciable for bands 1 and 2. So A and B make no difference to us.
To the town, yes,
Yeah,
you're correct. For this particular council, we're asking for
So
an
there's
advocacy position on behalf of the
So
state.
all things
yes.
being equal, there's no harm in supporting the Walga position, because it
No
makes no
harm
difference
whatsoever.
to us. Okay.
Okay. Right, councillors. So you have an option here. So, first of all, councillors, we have the officer's recommendation on the other items until we get to number 6. So what I can do is I can pull number 6 out separately and we can vote on the others first. If there's no objections, then I'll leave it all together. But my question is, are there any objections from councillors to any of the other items from 1 through to 5?
Yes, there are. On which, give me one moment, on voting methods, item 3.
Sorry?
Voting methods, item 3.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, councillors, are there any other objections to any other item on the list?
Mine was not an objection to 6. I now
Okay,
understand, so I don't
yes,
plan
but
to
what
pull
I'm
that
going
out.
to do is I'm going to pull item 3 and item 6 out. We're going to vote on 1, 2, 4 and 5 first, en bloc, for lack of a better word. And then we'll come back to number 3 and then we'll come back to number 6 separately. Okay, so councillors, I would like a mover for the officer's recommendation for the Walga advocacy positions on item 1, 2, 4 and 5. Can I have a mover for that? Councillor Wilding, seconded Councillor Polifka. Do I have anyone against? I'll declare those carried. Councillor Ames, your...
His hand was up, which I think means he's voting.
Yes, my hand was up to move the motion, but it's already moved and passed, and I'm agreeable with that. Thank you very much.
Okay, right. Now, we're going to go back to point 3, which is the voting methods. Council supports advocacy position A. The sector supports first past the post as the preferred voting method for general elections if operational preferential voting, OPV, remains as the primary method of voting. The sector supports the removal of the proportional part of the voting method for general elections. Now, I am supportive of that, but Councillor John is against. Now, what we can do is I can move number 3 if I have a seconder. Councillor John, you obviously will argue against, debate against. So I would like to move number 3. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Plivka. Against? We have Councillor John. Okay, so I'm going to speak to this first and then we'll go to the seconder and then we'll come to you, Councillor John. In the October elections, the last October elections, there was significant confusion across multiple councils about the preferential voting system. It added complexity. It also added a significant additional cost to local governments. We can all point to several local governments where the declaration of their elected officials took some weeks, as opposed to first past the post, which traditionally can be determined usually within that evening or 24 hours. So the added cost and the added staff time was phenomenal. I think from the public's perspective, first past the post is a straightforward methodology. The fact that we had community members asking candidates, you know, how does this work? There was a lot of confusion amongst the public. We know from the scrutineers that there were many ballot papers that only had one name because people were unsure. Others had every name with a number against it. The fact that there is such a variation in the way in which people can vote with preferential voting is somewhat problematic. One would hope that if preferential voting continues, that it will be a little more easy to cope with at the next election. However, I'm not entirely sure that will be the case. So I support the officer's recommendation to support first past the post. Councillor Plivka, you seconded this?
Reserve.
Okay. Councillor John, you're against, so if you'd like to speak.
I would love to speak. Optional preferential voting is the current system that we have and had at the last election. It is standard with both state and federal governments, which also use that system. It is a fairer system and Australians understand it. As an advocate for greater democracy, I believe we should ensure that voters receive their more preferred candidates are elected. Before reintroducing it last year, first past the post had only been in for about 10 years, which was brought in by the Colin Barnett government. This was in fact a reversion when they brought it back last year. It worked previously and was the same system that state and federal governments had, so I think a simpler system isn't necessarily a better system, and I think people should get the candidate that most represents them and their views.
Thank you, Councillor John. Do I have any other speakers for? Any other speakers against?
If there's no one speaking for, I can speak for it. Okay. Look, I certainly appreciate Councillor John's point, and I think that really is the answer, is that at a state and a federal level, where we see the prevalence of political parties, this method of voting is apt for that. At the local government level, where, in my view, we're people of the community, we're not members of political parties, I think first past the post is probably the more appropriate, given the more intimate nature of being a councillor and being someone actually embedded in the community. So I would think that that's the preferable thing to do in terms of the candidates that would be returned.
Thank you. I'll conclude as the mover of this. I'm a great believer in independent people being at the local level of government. I agree that preferential voting exists in state and federal, mainly because party politics are a ingrained part of state and federal politics. I think at a local level, party politics potentially should not be a part of the equation. I think we're here to represent our community and to advocate for our community. And I have a fear that I can understand why party politics have positions in state and federal level, but when it comes to the local level, I think the independence of decision making is really important. So I prefer first past the post. So that's why I'm advocating for this. So, and I do take your point, Councillor John. I do understand the preference for the preferential voting in the state and federal level. So, councillors, I'm going to put this to the vote. All of those in favour of point 3, the officer's recommendation, please raise your hand. So I've got Councillor Plifka, Councillor Wilding, myself, and I'm Councillor Ames, you're voting for it. And against, I have Councillor John. So that is carried. Okay. We now move to item 6, which is method of election of the mayor. Now, we have 3 options here. So we have 6A, 6B or 6C. Councillor Wilding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd be happy to move option B.
Okay. And the seconder?
I'd like to second that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so we have Councillor Wilding moving 6B. We have Councillor Ames moving, seconding 6B. Do I have anyone against? Yes, Councillor John. Okay, we will enter into debate. Councillor Wilding?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Very brief from me. I think councils have unique dynamics, unique communities, and should have the freedom to decide what is best for themselves rather than it being imposed by the state government. Whether that be directly elected or by the council, it should be the choice of that particular local government based on the needs of their own community.
Thank you. Councillor Ames, you're the seconder.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I echo Councillor Walding's moving of the motion. It also allows, I suppose, the opportunity for councillors that are elected to have a bit better understanding from who the elected members are after election night. It would be unheard of if there was a new councillor that was immediately elected into a leadership position with no local government experience or understanding of the role. We are understanding, and I also include myself in this, that becoming a new councillor once first elected is a bit of a mind well and a very, very, very steep learning curve. So for the opportunity to be a councillor first, get some experience in local government, to then obviously be a leader within the local government, I think option B allows this, and also, as Councillor Whiting has alluded to, allows our local government to make the choice moving forward as well. So thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor John, you're speaking against.
I am. Our council talks a big game about increasing voter turnout and increasing democracy. I think it would be remiss of us to do that on one hand and then disincentivise voters to elect their mayor on the other by taking that opportunity away from them directly and taking that decision for ourselves. So I would be encouraging us to go with option C, which would have us have a popularly elected mayor similar to Class 1 and 2 bands of local government. Just on to another point, there would be no further cost as the ballots would just be included with every other ballot for councillors, which is what other local governments did in band 1 and 2. So unless you were really worried about printing costs, I think it would be fine. So, I think it's a more democratic process, and I think we should be advocating for more advocacy so we can get more voter turnout in our local government elections.
Councillor Polifka, you look like you want to debate.
Yeah, look, not forming a view one way or the other. I just concur with what Councillor Wilding had said. Let's just give ourselves the flexibility. Let's not lock ourselves into a particular position. And look, this item can, if council is so minded, come before council, and council can choose one of those methods. They can change it to directly elected if that is the what council is hearing from the community, and that's what council thinks is best. So certainly totally concur with what Councillor Wilding said in terms of let's not give the state government any more power.
Okay, so I'm the last one standing, so I'm actually just going to have a quick comment on this, in that before I was elected to council, I would have supported a popularly elected mayor. However, within a very short period of time of being elected, I changed my mind very quickly. The reasons advocated, put forward by Councillor Wilding and others, including Councillor Ames, is that, once you're elected, it is a whirlwind and you very quickly learn that you don't know a lot. So I don't necessarily believe that someone with zero local government experience can be popularly elected as mayor and fulfil those duties adequately straight away. I think it's like any major job in the world, you have to walk before you run. So that's my personal position. I'm putting it forward here. I agree that this is a topic that is often raised, and I think that once you've been on a council for a little while, you come to realise and appreciate the breadth of knowledge that's required to do the job. So I will move back to Councillor Wilding as the mover of this motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Very briefly, just to respond to Councillor John's comments around a council-elected mayor not necessarily being democratically representative, to say that electing a mayor through the council is not democratic would be to say that any decision of council is not democratic. People put faith in us to make these decisions on their behalf, and that is one of those many decisions. As Councillor Ames has highlighted, the introduction of a popularly elected mayor is rife with a number of issues that are not present with the current system, and makes it, in my opinion, an undesirable outcome. And as such, option B remains the best choice for local governments across the board.
Okay, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour of 6B, please raise your hands. Councillor Polifka, Councillor Wilding, Councillor Hamilton and Councillor Ames. All those against, Councillor John. Okay, so we will now move to 12.5. Now, because some councillors have been at work today, I just want to give a few minutes for councillors to peruse a hard copy of a plan that is in front of you. Councillor Ames, I don't believe you will have a copy of this. Is it
I guess that would be correct. In saying that, I still know.
No, Councillor Ames, we're not going to actually make a comment, and I just wanted to check whether you actually had a copy. What will happen now is that someone will send you a copy by email. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
And whilst we've got some rhetoric going on about this, the officer will talk us through this, but I just want to ensure that a copy is sent to you by email, if possible. Okay. So, councillors, if we can just have a few minutes to allow our Director of Community Planning to send that email, and Okay. Ms Brennard, you've sent that email to Councillor Ames? Okay. So I will ask you to give a little bit of an overview. I'll ask the community members if we can be a little bit quiet while we have this overview from Ms Brennard. Okay?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to present this document to you this evening. So it's my pleasure to present the updated final concept plan for your consideration and your endorsement to release for public comment. Following on from our workshop, our 2-hour workshop, I believe, last week on this draft concept plan, the document in front of you reflects your valuable feedback. Specifically, it's the changes with the trees in the eastern zone, green space between residential blocks, rooftop and entry spaces, activation at both Guildford and Old Perth Road entries. Excuse me. The draft plan that's going out for public comment is a culmination of significant work by the project consultants, key stakeholders, the steering committee, including council representatives Mayor Catherine Hamilton and Councillor Talon Ames, and also the Swan Districts Football Club, as well as town administration staff, and I want to acknowledge and thank everybody for their hard work today. We should note that this is not a decision-making point. It's only the first stage of this project with going out for public comment, and that it remains very much subject to state and federal funding for it to be realised. Regardless, it is potentially an exciting and transformational project for the town, with the opportunity to create a multiple destination point with a multi-layered offering that includes recreation, residential, commercial and community offerings, as well as stronger links to the town centre. In the drafting of this plan, the town is also presenting a significant urban renewal project for the Eastern Corridor. The key elements of the plan, which we discussed last week as well, include oval reorientation and sizing in line with the AFL guidelines, improvement of spectator arrangements and providing for fit-for-purpose Swan District Football Club facilities, provision of new and improved community amenity, including but not limited to meeting rooms, recreational spaces and an enhanced youth precinct. It also has a commercial offering. It's also looking to enhance and utilise our heritage spaces, and there is a residential development component in the longer term, which is very much subject to the states. The project itself, I should probably also add, just as a reminder, has a long way to go. We're only at the very beginning stages of this at this point in time. It's something like 6 to 8 years away with the work that we need to do on the project, and then the residential element is probably some 15 to 20 years away. So we just need to put it in that context when we consider it. With regard to the public comment period, that will be for a 3-week period commencing from Monday the 28th of October and finishing on Monday the 18th of November. It offers as much opportunity as possible for public input, and that input will include 2 workshops, one on a Monday evening of the 4th of November and the second on a Wednesday afternoon, the 6th of November. There will also be static displays in the library and the customer service centre. We are also exploring having a static display at Hawaiian Shopping Centre as well. And there will be opportunities when that is at Hawaiian for people to talk to an interviewer and have assistance with completing the survey, which will meet some of our requirements in our disability access and inclusion plan. There will also be signage around the community to promote it and encourage people to have their say. And of course there will also be your standard social media. Feedback will then be considered by the steering committee before coming back to council in December, most likely, as part of the presentation of the final feasibility study, concept plan and business report, unless major changes are required, and in which case the timeline will change. Any questions?
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, councillors, I'll open it out to questions.
Madam Mayor,
So
just before you ask questions,
yes, Councillor Ames.
just wanted to confirm that email has been received from the Director of Communities and all is clear. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor Polifka, you wanted to ask some questions to begin?
I suppose the broad question is how does this document differ from the one that we had seen in the workshop? Now, that's just I suppose to set the scene in terms of the nature of the questions. I'm at liberty to discuss sort of documents we had seen in the workshop, or is that, yeah. So in the workshop we had I suppose what looked more like a planning document, so there was sort of an overhead view. And focusing my attention on so on the left-hand side of the document that everyone has in front of them, that there was a building footprint that I suppose, for want of a better description, was in the form of a zigzag. And I think that from memory that the built form may have also reflected that. I suppose for me, I'm just trying to work out, because this is, I suppose, not so much a planning document, it's more of a, I suppose, a built form representation of what would follow from that. From this, how can I tell what the building footprint for those particular buildings would be?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it is a concept plan, so it's really just a guide in terms of the spaces, but it is also reflecting the town centre master plan's guidelines and aspirations around height. But yeah, essentially it's just a guide at this point in time to just stimulate conversation, and it is representing the different zones of the plan rather than being at the level of detailed design.
So in terms of what could be built, currently here, so again, turning to the left-hand side, there's that stacked white building. That appears to be, and I've just counted them, so I might be wrong, there seems to be 10 stories there. Then there's 5 stories to the north, well, not the north, sorry, the south, because obviously this is not oriented that way. And then further still, there's another building which is 5 stories. Is that what we're saying, is that in each of those footprints that would be the height limits, or is that just what may be possible?
May be possible. It is a guide. The highest we can go is 10 stories, so it won't be any higher. And this is a conversation that will be had through public comments as well. But it's definitely a guide. The next stage of the project will give us more information, including numbers of infill, etc. But do bear in mind, this is a state, it's not the housing element or the residential element is not for the town of Bassendean. It's a state government conversation, and it will be very much subject to their interest and their funding capacity.
So in terms of, and this is the other question which I'd raised at the workshop, was the location of trees that would satisfy the criteria of our newly minted planning policy, or local planning policy 13. From this diagram, or a built form representation, how can we know how many trees of that nature would fall within the footprint of these built forms that we see in this document?
That will be, again, subject to the next stage of design, I believe. It's been represented as best as possible, and we will be very much driven by our policy and obviously the town's commitment to achieving tree canopy that's in line with the policy of 30 or 40%. In any case, it's as representative as possible, but again, next stage will give us more information about that. I would probably just reassure you that tree canopy will be an important outcome for us as part of this project.
And I suppose returning to that question about the building envelope, for want of a better description, the one I'd seen at the workshop was in that zigzag configuration. Has that now been altered? Are there 3 discrete building envelopes on that left-hand side, or is what we're seeing just a proposed built form, and there is still the underlying building envelope is still in that zigzag configuration? Because I mean, that's a document I suppose I would like to see.
My understanding with the change to the layout there is to be able to represent the tree canopy better than we did previously, but I can go back and check that, but that's my understanding. One of the outcomes from the workshop was to be able to represent the tree canopy, so because we're aware that will be of great interest to the community, and as a result, this slight redesign is in response to that.
And just on that though, so to acknowledge where the tree canopy is, but in terms of, I suppose, preventative measures, so if we're going to the state government and saying these are the building envelopes, is it such that the building envelopes exclude the possibility for any of these existing significant trees to be disturbed?
I might have to ask you to ask that question again.
So the building envelopes do not include any of the trees. So rather than having the zigzag configuration I had seen, which did encapsulate where some of these trees are there now distinct building envelopes that do not impinge upon any of the trees that would satisfy the criteria of that local planning policy?
Yes, I believe so. Yeah.
Is that has that been mapped? Is that a diagram we could see? Or?
I can organise that. Yeah, that might be the best approach for that.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Okay, how to put this? My question is that we have one document here, and I'm assuming that the community consultation will have several documents. Am I correct in assuming that this is the only one that's available to us now and that the others are still in development? Is that where we're at?
Yes, that's correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay. So, so the list of other documents that are going to be provided to the community, I'm assuming that we've got something like this, then we would have the type of planning that Councillor Plisk was mentioning, which is an overhead bird's eye view. Would that be correct? Yeah. Right. We would have the feasibility study in its entirety provided to the community, the patch report that no, that's not going to be provided.
No, they haven't been finalised yet. That'll be part of what comes to council in December. Those documents are informing the concept plans, however, so they represent the conversations and the work that's been done through this process.
So the other document I've seen is what we call the blobs. So, will that be provided to the community? I wouldn't see any problem with it, but
this is the next stage from what is called the relationship diagram, so I'm not sure that it's actually necessary, but we can be guided by yourself with regard to that. However, this does represent that relationship diagram. It's just the next stage.
Okay. The communication that's going to be provided to the community, I mean, we've seen the facts sheet, which I must admit, I only spent about 10 minutes on that and sent it through, and I actually even noted that I made a mistake in my first couple of paragraphs. So the facts page, you've received feedback from myself and another councillor. You've indicated that that's going to be in there for the community, but there's also survey questions that will be provided to the community. We haven't seen that, have we? If we have, I've missed it.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe the community engagement plan as a draft was sent to councillors, but I will confirm that. But it was an earlier stage of the document.
Yeah, that was ages ago, wasn't it? About a month ago.
You'd be testing my memory. I think it's fairly recently that we've sent that.
Okay.
But I can resend. That's absolutely fine. And if I could just add, with your permission, whilst this is the slide that will be, or the concept plan that will be circulated out to the community, in terms of the consultation process and the workshops and also the links that are provided on the web page, there will be the story that gets us to this point. There's actually an animation kind of slideshow that takes us and the community step by step through the process, and this is the end outcome. So I think that will help enormously with people understanding the different design elements of the project.
I will just insert a correction there. You just said the end, but it's not the end. It's the beginning of a community
Very much so.
consultation.
I wouldn't like that to be misinterpreted.
Yeah,
No.
so just making sure those words are taken out.
We are in the very first and early stages of the development of this project.
Councillors, I'll let others ask questions. I just have some other ideas forming in my head. So councillors, if there's anyone else who'd like to ask questions.
I suppose, sorry to keep on about that, but so this document here, obviously we saw a version which differed of this document in the workshop, and then there were those other, I suppose, overlay documents, so the overhead doc. Is that document currently in existence that relates to this built form, and is that something that we can see?
Yes. Yeah.
Before we decide?
The document's available, and you've got an earlier version of that. That document hasn't changed except for this final slide, so you've already got opportunity to look at that. None of those slides have changed. It's only this last one, so in effect you have it. I would think. The other comment I'd possibly make is that we're on a fairly tight time frame to be able to deliver this to the December council if we possibly can. That's very much subject to public feedback. So I'd be looking to get an outcome tonight that allows us to go to public consultation from the beginning of next week, if we can.
What would be, I suppose, in terms of that time frame, obviously I understand to get it for the December OCM, and the consultation period for the public would be how long?
3 weeks, 21 days.
And what would be the processing time for administration upon receipt of those? Because I mean, the December OCM is that early or late? When does that occur?
So, through you, Madam Mayor, the process once the consultation period has finished, which is technically 8:30 on the 8:30 a.m. on Monday, the 18th of October, which will be exactly 3 weeks after it's released. That information is tabulated by an external or organisation that's hosting the survey. They send those results back to Patch Group, who will analyse the results and present them to the steering committee for the steering committee meeting that's scheduled for that Friday. And then a report is prepared for council consideration immediately following that steering committee meeting. I think that's about the 18th of November, I'm guessing at the date, my apologies. And that's all subject to whether the changes are minor or major. If they're minor changes, then that will be the timeline. If there's more significant change, then we will need to review the timeline, and that will be discussed with the steering committee.
I suppose that's the thing. I'm not foreshadowing changes. This document may well do what it needs to do, but it's just that I haven't seen that other underlying document before making the decision. In terms of any leeway we had, as there days, maybe a week or so, I mean, is any sort of, how much time would we have to still enable all the processes that need to be done to occur? Because obviously not wanting to delay it, but to make the best decision possible.
Can I jump in? I think we've got off track here. So at the workshop, we had 2-hour workshop, and what you're seeing in front of you tonight is based on your feedback, the changes. So you have seen the document you don't think you've seen. The building in the corner to the northeast was a zigzag. There was talk about a significant tree that currently sits behind the goals at the existing oval. That tree now is represented on that plan. The building's been broken up to accommodate the tree. What we are proposing to build here, we're not building residential. Your question should be focused on the stakeholder engagement about building a brand new Swan Districts Football Club and community facilities, and including our heritage stands. So you're getting lost, and now we're looking at getting an extension. The reason that we're here this week was we've had a week after a 2-hour workshop to get to this point. We were going to have a special council meeting on the night. Out of respect to council requesting time, we've pushed it back a week already. So we've already condensed our program. we're not asking you to make a decision about whether you personally accept this concept plan. We're asking you to go to the community for their feedback. So I think we need to get back onto track. If there's any questions about what has changed since the workshop, happy to take them. But there is a fly-through that's being presented, and it's not because we're holding it back, it's because the animation hasn't been an additional request, an additional budget request. So when the community's filling out the survey, they can do a 1 minute 30 fly-through, which builds this program from a bare base to what you see now in front of you. So I think you've had all the information. I think the decision is quite simple. I think we just now need to get to the point where this is going out to the community consultation phase.
Okay, You've said that the consultation will start on the 28th, which is 6 days from now?
Yeah, next Monday.
Right. So all the documentation that we don't have at the moment is going to be ready to go live by the 28th.
Yes, that's correct. And I can also make sure we provide any relevant information that's been raised tonight through the CEO bulletin as well.
Okay, well, here's a question. If the consultation was pushed out to the 22nd of November, which is the Friday of that week, rather than the Monday morning, that provides an additional 5 days of consultation to the community. I guess I'm particularly interested in the communication package that's going to be presented to the community. Councillors,
Can I give a brief overview of what will be provided on the website landing page for Monday, if that will assist?
please, yes.
Okay, so what's being planned in terms of engagement is that on Monday the 28th of October the website will go, or the landing page will go live if you like, and provide a preamble to the project. So that
Sorry, what?
a preamble,
Right.
or an introduction to basically set the scene, provide the context, allow for people to understand the different stages of the project and its different elements of the project. Along with that preamble, there will be a link to an online survey. There will also be a link to the FAQ. There will also be a link to the concept plan, and there will also be a link to the flyover, which is the story of that you're all familiar with from the workshop that was provided last week. So those different slides.
Okay, sorry, you went very fast there. That's, to my
mind,
mind, 6.
Yeah, so I'll go through it. So
Yep.
we've got the preamble, which sets the
Got
scene.
that. Link to the online survey.
Correct. Link to the FAQ, so the frequently asked questions. Link to the concept plan, and a link to what we call the flyover, and that gives you different.
Okay, so
the 3D view.
I'm just going to interrupt. You said concept plan without an S on the end, but I'm assuming there are concept plans, because if you're going to have an overhead view and there's got to be more than one plan.
Well, it's the same plan, but presented from different angles.
Yep.
There's only one plan that's going out. The plan that's going out is our preferred option.
Yep.
But the flyover presents that plan from different angles and almost a three-dimensional view. So you do see it from overhead,
Yep.
you do see it from the perspective of Guildford Road, and so on.
I was aware of the flyover from the email from the CEO, and I understood that was going to take time to get together. I actually don't have a problem with that.
Yep.
Okay. Is there any reason why the community consultation could not be extended out to the 22nd of November, close of business on the 22nd of November, and still, I think you'd still have time to get it to the December meeting, would you not?
We may, but it does condense it considerably for a patch group because they need to do the analysis, which will take 2 to 3 days. We do also need to have a steering committee meeting because it needs, in accordance with our governance framework, it must go to the steering committee before it goes to council. I would have to check our diary to see if that's actually possible. I would imagine that patch group would have some concerns with being able to deliver it in that time frame, which are potentially justified.
Okay, I'm just finishing it off at 8:30 or something on a Monday morning in the morning. To me, seems a very odd time to finish your surveys.
It's only because of the survey going live on the 28th of October at 8:30. So it's just the literal, but that's flexible. But it's just literally a set time frame. You turn it on and you turn it off, but we can amend that.
Okay, Councillor Wilding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just for clarity's sake, Mr. CEO, you mentioned one of the changes being the Z-shaped building thing. Were there any other? Sorry, could you outline the other changes between now and then? I think Councillor Polifka may have asked it earlier, but there was a lot of questions.
I think there was only 3 main changes, which Michelle alluded to in her presentation. I think the other one was providing more green garden space to the rooftop buildings, which, again, given that the concept really is around football club and community facilities and the POS enhancements, it's a nice to have, but so I think that was about the only change that was made. I think, can I just say that even if we, if council need to determine tonight whether they're happy broadly with the concept plan, because the engagement plan isn't going to change the concept. So the only reason there needs to be delay is if there's a problem with the concepts. And last week we were pretty happy with those minor changes, and we've presented those tonight. So I'm not sure why there needs to be a delay unless it's to do with the elements of the concept, the actual plans.
Okay, so sorry, Councillor Wilding, you go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a question similar to that line in terms of if council was to defer it for a week, is there a world in which a different document comes back to us next week, or are we voting on functionally the same thing?
Well, we won't be bringing back another concept plan because we've had no guidance tonight to say there's anything wrong with the one in front of you.
Okay. Well, there is one element in here which I suggested during the workshop, which I can't see, which was the water sensitive urban design in the hard surface area, which is supposed to be the view corridor. That's not there. So, and I do recall that on the southern portion of the overhead plan, there was water sensitive urban design, for lack of a better word, a kidney shaped lake on the southern side, which was to deal with water accumulating on the southern side. So this plan that's in front of me doesn't have those things, but my assumption is that if you had the overhead view, the southern side one should surely be there, but the one in the hard surface area is not. So that's just off the top of my head one minor element that I raised, and I remember raising it because I was disturbed with the volume of hard surface in that area. So you know the area I'm talking about. So, councillors.
Can I just respond to that,
yeah,
Madam Mayor, with respect? So in the southeast corner, you can see there is a kidney-shaped body of water. That's where the drainage and the swale was going to be developed. So that's in behind the cam bar over in the southeast corner. So that has been accommodated. Yeah. And then the hard stand, yes, those comments were made, but that's a detailed design element. That's the function of that space is for events and a landing and a view corridor. When detailed design comes, if council insists on water sensitive urban design and not hard surfaces, and that's another detailed design. Essentially, we're asking the community around the orientation of the oval, the view corridors, and freeing up that space for the landing from Success Hill. we're not going to get down into the surfaces, whether it's tiled, whether it's paving, whether it's lawn. It is a broad concept. So to expect that level of detail now is not really relevant to the conversation about whether this should go out or not.
So, Mr. CEO, the orientation of the oval is not visually evident to people who are looking at this plan right now. So there has to be some overhead plan, which Ms. Brennan has referenced. Yep.
Again, with respect, I disagree because I know which way north,
Yep.
east, south and west is. So.
Councillor Ames.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I've been obviously eagerly listening to everyone's comments and almost debate. I'm happy to move the motion that's presented, as we've got a very professional and experienced development group here that is set with timelines. We all as councillors have seen all the information over the last 7 days. Obviously, yourself and me, we're on the steering group, and we've got a bit more pretty information about the story to what it's come to, this particular engagement. And all the stuff that we're talking about now as council, I would like to think is going to be coming from our community because they're going to be so invested in what is going to be an absolutely sensational project for the town of Bassendean in the next 5 to 10 years. So I'd like to move it off as a recommendation, please.
Councillors, do we have a seconder? We have Councillor John. Okay. Do we have anyone against?
Are we able to move amendments?
Yes, you'll have to ask the mover. So first of all, I'd like to know what your amendment will be.
Yes, it's just in relation to the area that I've been exploring. So we've got the 3 built forms there. The amendment would be for the, based on what the CEO has said in terms of that zigzag building envelope, if that hasn't changed, and I take it on faith that it hasn't, that be modified to be limited to the building footprints that we see in the what we're calling the proposed master plan. That brings me to the second point. In terms of proposed master plan, we've been calling this a concept plan. Is that the title?
The correct title will be Proposed Concept Master Plan.
Okay. So yeah, I mean that would be the amendment I'd be proposing, is just that the building envelope in that area be restricted to be consistent with the built form that is represented on the proposed concept master plan. So it's just to make sure that the building envelope is consistent with the document that we do have in front of us.
I understand what you're trying to do, Councillor, but we're not at that stage. This is not the purpose of this. The state government hasn't even approved it for residential development. So for us to put an arbitrary envelope on that oval has no legal or statutory standing.
Surely it's up to the council to approve whether that actually becomes a building envelope rather than the state government.
I think your role now is to determine whether future residential is going to be on that side of the oval. What it looks like, that's an artist's representation of what it might look like based on your aspirations and the Town Centre Master Plan guidelines. So,
okay, it's going to be subject to community consultation. So at the moment, we can't determine whether that's actually going to be a building parcel at the moment. So, okay, sorry. Now, let's go back because Councillor Plifka, you actually were trying to move an amendment which I found rather confusing. So let's hear, because you have to, if you're going to move an amendment, yes. You've heard from the CEO his position on that. You have a mover, which is Councillor Ames, of any potential amendment. What I need to have is a word-perfect amendment, and I need to know whether Councillor Ames will accept it. That's the position I'm in at the moment. Sorry.
What we need is a legible amendment with a seconder.
Yes, but we need a legible amendment first.
Yeah, and it, at this point, it has nothing to do with councillor Ames.
Look, I can draft that with some difficulty by reference to the document that's not currently before us, but was before us in the workshop, so that the building envelope, as shown on the planning
Sorry,
document.
councillor,
May I please request an adjournment
yes, please.
so
Okay,
that we can work this out?
yes, please. I am wanting a mover to adjourn this meeting for 5 minutes. Councillor Wilding, seconded councillor John. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried. Okay, let's have 5 minutes. Thank you, everyone. So, councillor Polifka, could you confer with our governance officer?
My request.
Because we have a mover for the right. We have order in the room again, okay. I will have a mover to recommence the meeting, councillor John, seconded councillor Wilding. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried. Councillor Polifka, back to you.
Yes, I've obtained comfort that the document to which I was referring has been superseded by this document, and so accordingly I am happy to withdraw the amendment, given that the underlying documents would be consistent with this.
Okay.
I just hadn't seen them, that was all.
Okay. So, we have Councillor Ames who has moved the officer's recommendation. We have Councillor John who has seconded the officer's recommendation. I'm going to speak against, so we will enter into debate. Councillor Ames?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We've seen, and I dare say, as I mentioned before, myself, including yourself, Madam Mayor, we've been privy to this entire journey from its inception through our steering group, through workshops, through opportunities to be able to ask information to our CEO, through our Director of Communities, to each other in the workshop as well. This seems to be rushed, but we have to remind ourselves that we are going to advertising to gain greater information from our community. We're not making a decision here about what colour paint is going to be in the neutral gendered toilets moving forward. Okay, we're here to be able to provide a plan for the future for us that are living in our community that would like to see something come from a council that is striving towards greatness to be able to put something like the Bassendean precinct on the map. I think we're getting too tied down with the nitty gritty, like our last conversation has been for the last 30 minutes. I have full trust in our Department of Communities Director. I have full trust in our developers. I've also got full trust in our community to be able to provide us with the information that we are dilly-dallying over at this point in time. So I feel that there's an opportunity here to give something to our community prior to 2025, to say that we've been working hard behind the scenes for almost 12 months. Let the community give us some of the information that we are asking for, and let's move on and provide something of greatness within the town of Bassendean for the next 5 to 10 to beyond years moving forward. So I'd like to further reinforce that I am in motion. I'm in favour of the officer's recommendation, and I'd also like other councillors within the chambers to have their thinking caps on about not getting stuck down into the nitty-gritty and allowing our community to get stuck into it for us. Thank you.
Councillor John?
I concur with Councillor Ames. I think we need to get this out to our community so we can get their feedback, because I want to know what they have to say on this, because it's pretty exciting and I want to hear what they have to say.
Okay. So to be clear, I'm speaking against this for one reason only. That it's been mentioned several times that I'm on the committee and that I know everything that's gone before. And I would suggest that the planning has not been 12 months in the making for this. My concern is that those of us on the committee may well have had exposure to some of these documents, but the documents have changed significantly over that period of time, and that there are various voices on that committee. So my concern relates to the fact that at this moment in time, I do not have a complete set of documents in front of me that are going to go out to the community. I have some concerns about that. Having said that, I actually am in favour of it going out to community consultation. So in the end, I am going to vote for this to go through to community consultation. However, I want to be on the record in the debate here that I have concerns about not knowing exactly what is going out to the community. That is my concern, and it's the only reason I've raised my hand to say I'm voting against this. I do believe that we do need to look at redeveloping the Oval and Swan Districts facilities. I think they're dilapidated. I think they're shockingly poor. I believe that we need new community facilities. There are some elements of what I'm seeing in front of me which I quite like. There are other elements that I do not like. This is a personal opinion on my part. Am I going to actually put that layer, that overview of personal opinion out onto the community? No, I'm not. I am really interested in what the community have to say. And it's not even the plan itself, it is the fact that I don't have the survey questions in front of me. I would like to know exactly what the communication package is going to be. This is my nature. This is my nature to actually dot the I's and cross the T's. This is what I like seeing. So, yes, a little bit uncomfortable with this. So, I've argued against, but I will, when we come to the vote in favour to go out to community consultation. Would I like the consultation to be a little bit longer? Yes, I would. Would I very much like the consultation not to finish at 8:30 in the morning on a Monday morning? Absolutely. If you can look at that, I would be happy. But I'm not going to actually try and get an amendment to that nature in here at the moment. So, councillors, I will now ask if there's anyone else who would like to argue for the officer's recommendation.
Yeah, certainly. Definitely in favour of what's before us, and that's what had precipitated some of my previous questions, was just to ensure that the underlying planning mechanics were such that we could get as, I suppose, as faithful a vision of what the community could actually expect, as opposed to, I suppose, an artist's rendering of that, so that we could in fact have this, as we see it, delivered to us. I mean, my fears for it would be that we got not more height, less height, that we might have got designs which were 2 stories where we've allocated it to housing. Whereas I think it's, as it's currently shown, we have what would be higher quality development, and very pleased to see, would be pleased to see that actually come to fruition. And that was hence the question regarding the trees as well. One very large tree there, it's accompanied by another 2 which are of a comparable size. So as it currently shows that, certainly in favour of what we see, and let's hope that we can actually get that as opposed to some less optimal outcome.
Sorry. Councillors, any other debate for or against Councillor Wilding?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to speak briefly for the item, and to reiterate to the community and the gallery as well that this is not council endorsing any particular element of the plan itself. This is, rather than going to the community with a blank canvas, this is a starting point. This is something we can do. How do you feel about it? What could we do differently? What is acceptable? What is not acceptable for you? So that when we do come back to this in the future, we have the full idea of what the community wants out of this plan. But this decision tonight, and the reason I am comfortable on voting for it on such a short turnaround between the 2 versions of the plan, is the plan is not dramatically changed, and we are not making any final decisions tonight. But this process will allow us, and giving the full time for this process will allow us to understand what the community wants out of it and to make a better decision in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Wilding. And Councillor Ames, your closing?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And it's great that we've got a united council back once again moving forward with this. I'm also really looking forward to having all this information come back in front of us, where we can really start getting some debate about what we've seen from our community. So we are going to go out to community. We are going to go ask them, what they see as the vision for the Bassendean Oval Precinct. Hopefully, with a few extra dollars in our back pocket, come the state and federal opportunities that we're about to embark on. Without what we're doing right now, the future doesn't work for us. The future doesn't start. So let's start the future now. And I look forward to seeing a unanimous vote in Chambers this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ames. I'll put that to the vote. All councillors in favour? Councillor Polifka, Councillor Wilding, Councillor John, Councillor Ames and Councillor Hamilton. Okay, that's carried. We will now move to item 12.7, which is the monthly financial report, and I believe we have a slight delay. So, Mr. White, are you providing a commentary on this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the briefest way, just a very slight amendment to the officer recommendation, if I may. There was a typo in the second part. The officer recommendation, the second bracket, should read streetscape contribution per tree. In the parentheses, rather than street contribution per tree. So streetscape contribution per tree, to be consistent with the rest of the recommendation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, any questions? Okay, so I will ask for a mover, Councillor Plivka, a seconder, Councillor Wilding. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried. Councillor Ames, you were in favour of that, weren't you? Yes, no.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and then the last one is the
So there's a officer's recommendation, which is
sorry.
in two parts. One is
Yes, yeah.
simple,
Sorry.
the other one's absolute.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, governors. Okay, sorry, I went straight to the bottom of the page. So, okay, so we voted on the point 2, recommended 2. So we go back to 12.7, recommendation 1, that Council 1 notes the explanation of material variance in the statement of financial activity. 2, receives the monthly financial report for the period ending 30 September 2024, which incorporates the statement of financial activity for the period to September 2024. Could I have a mover? Councillor Wilding, seconder, Councillor John. Anyone against? I'll declare that carried, and again, I believe that Councillor Ames, if he's not speaking, he is for. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
We now go to, and thank you for picking that up. Sorry? Yes. Yes. Okay. So 12.8, there are confidential attachments to this document, this report. So I would ask councillors if you have any questions that relate to the confidential attachment, we will have to go behind closed doors. But any questions that have no relevance to the confidential attachments, we will stay in chambers in the public realm for as long as possible. So, Mr. White, this one's yours as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess given we didn't have a briefing session, I can provide a reasonably detailed overview, or I can skip to the quick version. All of the information is actually in the officer report, and I'm presenting it basically because of the intricacies arising from the tender process, given we had almost a subsequent evaluation after we were unsuccessful in the second grant application. Shane's across the technical details, and I'm across the process that's led us to this point. But I guess suffice to say that eventually, after a couple of years of working on this project, we got to tender. We went out for 6 different options, a 4-pole and 5-pole options, 200 lux that's upgradable to 500 lux, and 500 lux for each 4-pole and 5-pole option. The tender process was conducted, and one particular tenderer was the preferred for all options. The 4-pole options were cheaper than the 5-pole options, and each design for the 3 configurations of the 4-pole options was reviewed by the lighting design contractor who we engaged for that purpose, and has deemed them all to be suitable and compliant. So all of those options are on the table. The recommended contractor is the cheapest for all three of those options. Initially, when the confidential attachment 1 was prepared, which is the initial tender evaluation report, at that time we were unaware, or the grant application was still pending. So that was heavily around going straight to 500 lux. Since on the 10th of October we were informed that we were unsuccessful in that grant application, the addendum to the tender evaluation report has not changed the initial recommendation of the panel in any way, but has brought in the more cost-effective options of 200 lux or 200 lux upgradable. In liaison with the Swan District Football Club, their strong preference is for 200 lux upgradable to 500 lux, and they have offered to split the additional cost associated with that above the current budget with the town, such that the budget increases would be as outlined in the report. I guess the only other thing I'd really want to say in relation to the budget is that at the maximum option presented to council, the town's contribution would be just under 20% of the project, whereas a project like this may well be a one-third, one-third, one-third in its normal format. And also that obviously there are some other funding partners in this, and just to acknowledge the Swan Districts Football Club, the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries Club Nightlights program, the Federal Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development, Communications and the Arts, Investing in Our Communities program, and the West Australian Football Commission. So the recommendation to council before you is to award the contract to the recommended contractor, which is identified in the confidential attachment number 1, and to increase the budget for the project to allow for up to the maximum additional contribution as identified in confidential attachment 2, but it's also in the public report in the financial considerations section. Thank you.
Councillors, questions?
I had an insightful conversation with our talented technical director earlier today about this that I would like to just share quickly and maybe re-ask the question so that can be shared with my fellow councillors.
You can re-ask the question and the officer can provide the response, but it's not for the councillor to share, it's for...
Yep.
So, unless it's an email, in which case all councillors should be copied into the emails.
It was not an email.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think how to rephrase it then. Give me 1 second.
Would the officer just like to actually provide the information?
So it was the reusability of the infrastructure and how important it is to happen given that we have a plan for the redevelopment of the Oval.
Yeah, through Madam Mike, thank you. So the project cost, you know, assuming that as part of the master plan and the bigger picture precinct, say is 10 years away, the view would be that certainly 10-year period is a long time to have new lighting installed, and I estimate that probably half of the cost of doing the work now could be saved because, for example, the towers can be reused. So the 4 towers can be reused. The footings obviously need to be relaid or redone. The towers either could be reused at the Oval or somewhere else. Probably lose a fair bit of the cabling and the conduiting, but I estimate about that half would probably could be reused as part of the precinct project or elsewhere.
Thank you. Councillor Plivka.
Yes, so the importance of 500 lux, what does that enable to occur at the Oval that would not be able to occur at 200?
Through Madam Mayor, it's for Waffle home games. That would be supported through 500 lux. 200 lux is suitable for training. And I neglected to mention before, and probably goes to Councillor John's question a little bit as well, the current lux is between 20 and 60, depending on where you're located within the vicinity. So I suppose should the project not proceed at this point, then the football club risks having that sort of substandard lighting for potentially 5 to 10 years, or however long the redevelopment project may take. But it is essentially, it broadens its use, but they can do most of what they need with 200 lux, but that would allow them to actually stage games at night time.
And in terms of the upgrade conversion from 200 to 500, how quickly could that happen if, for example, the AFL had a gather round based in Perth?
Yep, through Madam Mayor, I'll have a go at that one. So the towers that have been selected are of the structural capability to be able to enable more luminaires to be hung off them. So whilst at the moment the recommendation is 200 lux, adding the extra 300 lux, which is extra lights or luminaires, and I haven't, obviously, the costings are confidential, but it'd be quite a quick turnaround, so the towers are already capable of having the extra lights installed.
So we could potentially be, I suppose, entered into an AFL system as a possible venue on relatively short notice by simply adding additional light globes. Is that the case?
Yes, definitely the case. Yep.
Thank you.
Could I just suggest that maybe that's not the case? I understand that the AFL broadcast rights are 1,000 to 1,500. So for a televised AFL match versus a waffle match, it is different. And that's probably one of the other reasons why, if this Bassendean Oval gets reorientated in 8 to 10 years, then the polls are redundant, because the new oval will accommodate AFL pre-season and waffle grand final and AFLW night games, which means you'll need a minimum 1,000 to 1,500 broadcast quality, and these current light towers cannot accommodate that.
And in terms of that, so once that does occur, we'll speak positively about what's going to happen with our oval. Where could those lights be redeployed to in the town? Is there any where they could go?
Probably Ashfield, given that that's the next. Jubilee's getting a massive upgrade. Ashfield's only had a minor upgrade, but they could be sold to any other local government for sports lighting.
Okay, thanks.
Councillors, I'd like to ask a question in regards to the funding difference. Now, it says here on page 38 that this will be considered as part of the mid-year review, the budget review. So my interest is in knowing where the additional funding is presumed to be coming from. Is it going to come from a reserve, or is it going to come from projects not completed? What do you envisage, Mr. White?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a little bit difficult at the moment because we're reasonably early into the financial year, but it's fairly normal for there to be some surplus funds in some small amounts of surplus funds across a range of different budgets. And I think in previous years, the mid-year review here has largely been a sort of a balancing exercise rather than a hotbed for new projects at the town, and so I'd be reasonably confident that we could identify savings from within other existing budgets without needing to draw down on reserves or defer any other projects.
Okay, so just a curiosity question, the EMRC dividend payment, which should be coming through by the end of this year, I would assume that cannot be used for this, given the requirement for the EMRC dividends to be used for environmental or sustainability endeavours. Would that be correct?
That's correct, Madam Mayor, consistent with Council's resolution.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, are there any further questions? Okay, so councillors, do I have a mover for Part 1 of the officer's recommendation that council appoints the recommended tenderer shown in confidential tender evaluation report attached to this report for the Bassendean Oval Sports Lighting Upgrade 4-pole 200 lux upgradable to 500 lux configuration in accordance with terms and conditions as specified in RFT 07/2024 for the period of 8 months to commence upon council approval and letter of award. Do I have a mover, Councillor Plifka? Seconder, Councillor John. Do I have anyone against? No, I'll declare that carried. We now move to part 2, that council amends the adopted budget for the Bassendean Oval project to increase the budget by $262,361 to $1,314,105, to be funded as shown in table 2 or table 3 of the addendum of September. Is that correct?
Sorry, are the figures correct?
No, I was just looking at the 262. That's our contribution. The total project. So we're increasing. Okay, I got it.
Sorry, the
Yeah, sorry.
262.
No, that was me misreading it. I just had a moment.
And that's not all the town either.
Yeah, I know. That was just me doing a silly moment. Okay, thank you. Okay, do I have a mover for that? Councillor Plifka, seconded Councillor John. Do I have anyone against? I'll declare that carried. That was a foolish moment. Okay, councillors, there's no motions of which previous notice has been given that I'm aware of. There's no announcements of notices of motion for the next meeting, as far as I know. There's no urgent business, confidential business, none. We now come to the closure of the meeting, which is at 7:56 p.m. And the next ordinary council meeting will be held on Tuesday the 19th of November 2024, commencing at 6 p.m. Thank you everyone for your attendance and your dedication. Thank you to the staff for your efforts.